Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to News Toast. And wow, okay, so we actually have not one, not two, but three major updates for the Microsoft Activision Blizzard case today. There was a lot of movement in the background, most of which seems to be going in Microsoft's favor, including a big regulator possibly leaning into approving the buyout. Yes, you did hear that right, and this would actually be the biggest update for the acquisition thus far, so we're going to get into that today, as well as Sony maybe possibly regretting flying a little too close to the sun. They've had a lot to say about this acquisition thus far, a lot of complaining, but the way things shaped up today, they may be a little bit remorseful in that decision now. So yeah, there's a lot to get into here, and with all that, I mean, let's just go and jump right into the news, starting off with the premier Xbox Game Pass game being Wolong Fallen Dynasty. There's been a lot of lead up to Wolong's release. It is a day one Xbox Game Pass game after all, but more so, it's coming from the highly talented Team Ninja, the same studio behind Ninja Gaiden and Nioh. Both of those franchises are excellent, so there's a lot of anticipation for this game. It is Team Ninja's return to Xbox as well, and there's a lot of hope that it'll be as good as some of their previous titles. And well, about that, I'm happy to say, yes, it very much is. Reviews are rolling out now, and as of this recording, it has an 81 overall score on Metacritic and an 82 on OpenCritic. Now, we previously knew that this was another Souls-like inspired game. Of course, they've already had success with this genre in Nioh, but interestingly enough, Wolong is actually being more compared to another FromSoft game. Rather than drawing comparisons to Dark Souls, it instead apparently is more akin to Sekiro, with it prioritizing deflecting and parrying incoming attacks. I actually really like this though, and the reason I say that is because, for one, we don't really see as many games inspired by Sekiro as we do Dark Souls, but more so, we also get to see Team Ninja's expertise on a completely different combat system, and from the sounds of it, yeah, they aced it here with absolutely flying colors. Almost every critic I've seen seems to praise just how good the combat is in Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Yes, of course, it's challenging as expected, that comes with the genre, but if you like Sekiro, and if you've been craving more games like that, then Wolong, without a doubt, seems to be a must-play game. Now, on the opposite hand here, I have seen some criticism aimed towards its story and its characters, but you know, the thing about that is truthfully, I don't really know very many people that plays these type of games for their story specifically. Yeah, it's nice if they have a good story, but it's gameplay first and foremost. But nonetheless, if you are interested in this game, it is out today for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and of course, because you gotta love it, it's also available for Xbox Game Pass subscribers day one. Now, we also got an update on a leak that we heard about last week, being the Mario Day Nintendo Switch bundle. This leak came away from Bill Kuhn, which has proven once again that he does legitimately have sources, as Nintendo themselves confirmed the bundle today. Though I will say this, with a twist here that I think makes this bundle just a little bit more interesting. I'll get into that here in just a second. But this bundle includes a standard Switch. Unfortunately, no, it's not the OLED version. That's a peculiar choice, but hey, it does come included with some nice red-themed Joy-Cons, some stickers from the new upcoming Mario movie, and then finally, you also get a digital Mario game of your choosing. That's the part that I find really interesting here. I'm not sure I've seen this before. Let me know in the comments below if you have. But yeah, you'll get to make your own choice in which Mario game you want from the following titles. You have Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. You can pick any one of these three games. Though honestly, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't give consumers the choice of Mario plus Bowser's Fury. That is a newer title, and I feel like that would have just been a better choice than something like Super Mario Bros. But hey, I do like the fact that they're giving consumers a choice. I do think that adds a little to this overall bundle, which will release on Mario Day being March 10th for a grand total of $300. Oh, and we also got a release date for the Xbox and Steam version of Sifu. This game has been available on PlayStation and the Epic Games Store for about a year now. It did come over to the Switch late last year, but I mean, when this game originally launched, it received quite a bit of fanfare. It's a solid beat-em-up game with some challenge to it, though I will say the developer did backtrack on that by later on offering an easy mode per se, but now here we are a year later, and they've officially announced that it is set for both Steam and Xbox starting March 28th. And this also comes included with its arena update for all platforms. So, I mean, technically, everybody gets a little bit of something on March 28th. The Arena update, it comes included with an extra 10 hours of gameplay, with 9 new locations and 45 new challenges spread across 5 different game modes. This is where you'll fight off waves and waves of enemies in a survival-like match, and this update even comes included with a time attack mode. So, really, if you like Sifu, or if you're on Xbox or Steam and you've just kind of been looking forward to it, go ahead and mark your calendar for, again, March 28th. With some of the smaller stuff out of the way, though, let's just go and get into this Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, because there's a lot to go over here. 3 key things happened today, all one after another, so we'll just kind of go over each one by one. Instead of making 3 different videos, we'll just go ahead and bundle this into one complete video and try to make this as concise as possible. That's always my mission with News Dose. But yeah, the first thing that's happening here is possibly the biggest update for this case yet, and that's that one of the major 3 regulators, being the EU, reportedly is likely to approve the buyout without divesting Activision Blizzard. This is coming from Reuters, which posted this. Microsoft is expected to secure EU antitrust approval for its $69 billion acquisition of Activision with its offer of licensing deals to rivals. 3 people familiar with the matter said, helping it to clear a major hurdle. They then continue on to say that the European Commission, which is scheduled to decide on the deal by April 25th, is not expected to demand that Microsoft sell assets to win its approval, the people said. In addition to the licensing deals for rivals, Microsoft may also have to offer other behavioral remedies to allay concerns of other parties than Sony, one of the people said. Such remedies typically refer to the future conduct of the merged company. Now, from what we're currently hearing, it sounds like by Microsoft entering into a contract with both Nintendo and Nvidia, this has gone a long way in alleviating the EU of any concerns that they might have had prior. Of course, Sony, I mean, this is expected, but they still have yet to sign a contract. But one of Microsoft's leading arguments has consistently been, we're looking to bring Call of Duty to more platforms, not less. It will remain on PlayStation. And the fact is, they now have that in writing with both Nintendo and Nvidia. So, I mean, it's very hard to counter that argument. The question for these regulators now has really become, should we block a buyout simply because a competitor that currently is dominating the console market isn't happy? Is this actually bad for consumers, or is this just bad for Sony? So Microsoft really has pretty much answered every single concern that the EU has, and that's why it looks like the EU will indeed approve the buyout with, of course, likely concessions. Now, what those concessions will be remains to be seen. We'll get more into that in just a moment, but the final boss, as you will, for this entire buyout is still the same, and that is the CMA. The CMA has always been the wild card here, the FTC. They don't really have much of a case to win in court, as they're pretty much basing their entire argument off of ideology and politics. Then you have the EU. They're the ones that's being the most professional, following guidelines, communicating, and all that. And then you have the CMA. They've been more of this very bizarre mystery. Previously, they suggested Microsoft divest Activision Blizzard, which Microsoft absolutely will not do that. They've actually since confirmed that. So they will have to convince the CMA, which that's going to be a little bit harder, not impossible, but seemingly more difficult than convincing the EU. Now, with that said, though, technically, 2 things just happened that could actually sway them into the direction of Microsoft's favor. The first is pretty much what we just talked about. The EU is likely to pass this buyout, which, interestingly enough, the EU just delayed their final decision to April 25th. Now, the reason this is important is because the CMA's decision is scheduled for just 1 day later, being April 26th. Now, I mean, it seems very convenient that both of their decisions are side by side like that. And that does make you kind of wonder if the 2 are in discussion with one another so they can maybe align their decisions. Something that we learned about with the FTC is that they were having discussions with other regulators, so you have to kind of imagine that the CMA and the EU are in some sort of talks as well. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a guarantee that they'll come to the same conclusion, but with the EU likely approving the buyout, this might put some pressure on the CMA. In fact, and this is the next key update here, is that one remedy that Microsoft is willing to propose to the CMA found its way online today. Bloomberg reported on this where they stated, Microsoft also said it's willing to pay a third-party monitor to oversee their compliance, the people said, a measure designed to relieve the CMA from having to devote resources to make sure the tech giant follows through on its promises. The UK watchdog in its provisional assessment left the door open for behavioral remedies. The company has previously said it had a long record of keeping its promises to regulators. So this is a very interesting proposal by Microsoft because this was the CMA's big issue with any type of behavioral remedy. They previously basically said, we don't want behavioral remedies because we can't ensure you'll stay true to your word. We can't ensure that Call of Duty will be treated fairly on other platforms outside of Xbox. Well, Microsoft is offering a solution to that problem, and actually a very reasonable one at that. Now, will this be enough to alleviate their concerns? That's still the big question here. We'll have to kind of wait and see about that. Now, I have heard Microsoft might offer other remedies, such as a contract to make all Activision Blizzard games multi-platform for a 10-year period, much like what they did with Call of Duty. We'll see if they do anything like that. But nonetheless, Microsoft continues to work hard to get this buyout passed, and truthfully, I feel like they've done a good job in offering fair compromises. They continue to make it hard for regulators to simply oppose the buyout. Now, so far we've talked about the EU, we've also talked about the CMA, so I mean, hey, we might as well just go and hit the trifecta here because, well, what do you know? We also got an update for the FTC versus Microsoft lawsuit. Now, the big wrench over the last month or so regarding this lawsuit has been none other than Sony, which, I mean, really has been the case since day one of this entire fiasco. Anyways, though, previously Microsoft subpoenaed Sony, where Microsoft is basically saying, hey, you've been making all of these complaints, so prove it in court. Supply us with all the data that proves your case, or actually our case, because we believe you're guilty of a lot of the things that you're complaining about, such as exclusive contracts and content parity. They're saying, you do these things as well, Sony, so you know what? Let's make all the internal data public and let the chips fall where they may. So Microsoft is requesting 11 plus years of data, including exclusive contracts that Sony has entered into with third parties, including contracts that could possibly hurt Xbox and their consumers. Well, Sony has since delayed that subpoena over and over again, or at least until now, because the judge has finally had enough. They've now largely denied Sony's request to quash the subpoena. Now, I say largely because they didn't completely grant Microsoft their request either. Microsoft wanted 11 years of data that goes all the way back to 2012. I do think Microsoft chose that date specifically because it shows how dominant and ruthless Sony was during the PlayStation 4 generation, where Xbox was, basically on the brink of self-destruction. But instead, it's been ruled that Sony has to produce data dating back to 2019. So instead of 11 years that Microsoft wanted, they'll instead get 4 years. So in a way, this is almost a small victory for Microsoft, and then at the same time, a small victory for Sony. Even still, though, I think that this could actually be very bad for Sony. Any licensing agreement that they've made with third parties over the last 4 years, including contracts where they're not allowed to show up on Xbox Game Pass, that could pop up here. It could include exclusive contracts that might not have even been announced yet. That could possibly show up here. It could reveal dark secrets for all we know. And while they'll try to keep this as private as they possibly can, there is still a possibility that some of this stuff could end up leaking out, just like what we saw with the Epic Games versus Apple lawsuit. So with that in mind, Sony is possibly scrambling right now on what to do. This is why they kept delaying the subpoena in the first place. They did not want to produce this data, and you have to wonder with how everything is kind of shaping up here, especially with the FTC. Is Sony now kind of thinking, is all of this worth it? Hey, Microsoft, didn't you offer us like some 10-year contract or something? So, hey, do you all want to still work together here? Maybe we can come to some type of agreement after all. I mean, but yeah, as you can see here, there's a lot of things happening right now. It does seem like things are shifting over to Microsoft's favor, but there's still a lot that could happen here. The good news, though, is that we're almost there. The end game is here. We've stuck it out on this channel together. I mean, we've been talking about this for more than a year now. I do appreciate you all, but one thing is for sure, I am ready for this case to be over one way or the other. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with those Switch 2 rumors re-emerging once again, I went ahead and asked you all, are you buying the recent rumors that the Nintendo Switch successor could be announced this year? And actually, based on the results, it does seem like several of you all are starting to move over into that yes group, with 32% of you saying yes, while 58%, still being the majority, said no. So on one side, yeah, it looks like more of you all are starting to come over to that yes group, but yeah, most of you all still aren't expecting it. And I will say myself, I think there's a lot of reason to be cautious with some of these Switch successor rumors. It honestly feels like every single year we get some type of rumor of a new Switch console, whether that be a Switch Pro or just a flat-out Switch successor, like the most recent rumors are kind of saying. So I do completely 100% understand the skepticism here, but at the same time, I don't necessarily find it unrealistic to believe that a new Switch console is coming rather soon. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be announced in 2023. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying, though, is that the Nintendo Switch is in its 6th year. This is one of the longer life cycles for any Nintendo console ever made, and while the Switch is still selling phenomenally well, I could see Nintendo maybe releasing that next platform early in 2024. They did the same thing with the Nintendo Switch. It released, I believe, in March, so they could technically release a Switch successor early in the year, and I don't think that's necessarily going to hurt them, because as long as it has backwards compatibility and as long as it follows the same design. I mean, I know that's major questions when it comes to Nintendo, as they like to get all funky with their design and all of the different gimmicks, but if they follow those two things, then I feel like that it's going to be a smooth transition right into the next life cycle. The Nintendo Switch could then act as more of this budget-friendly option. I think that it would still sell incredibly well, and then this next, more powerful Switch, well, all of us that already have a Switch, we could just go out and rebuy that thing and then get all their new games with even better performance. So, I mean, even if you look at like something like the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5, just because those new consoles came out, that didn't mean that the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 was immediately irrelevant. That's not what happened. Nintendo could do the same thing where a lot of their games are cross-platform. They just, look and perform better on that next platform. I think that they could do this, but nonetheless, whether it's early 2024 or late 2024, that's my guess. We're going to get that next Switch successor at least sometime next year. As for when the actual announcement is made, we'll see about all that, but as I've said in previous videos before, I do feel like we're going to start to see leaks on this next Nintendo console sometime closer to the end of the year, one way or the other. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell the notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.